his great-grandfather was one of the judges in the Salem witch trials. So he's actually a character in the Crucible, which we're going to read / act out after exams. So you'll see there's Judge Hawthorne, who's Nathaniel Hawthorne was so upset by his family's involvement in the trials that he added a W to his last name, so you notice the spelling's different, in an attempt to distance himself from his family's history. So he was so upset, so disgusted by his family's involvement, he did not even want to have the same last name. His research on the Puritan lifestyle provided inspiration for young Goodman Brown, which we're going to read, and his most famous novel, The Scarlet Letter. The Scarlet Letter documents the journey of Hester Prynne, a married woman who has an affair with the minister. Did anybody see Easy A?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scarlet Letter.
That movie cracks me up.
Well, and she's doing, everything she's doing is based on Scarlet Letter that they're reading in class. So Hawthorne, Poe, and Melville are credited with creating the modern short story, a form Poe defined as a brief fictional work designed to create in the reader a single dominant impression or effect. And Poe brought the horror story to its zenith, exploring the psychology of madness and terror. So we're going to start reading on Goodman Brown. Then tomorrow's story, different shift, but you'll see who I got. Street of Salem Village, but put his head back after crossing the threshold to exchange a parting kiss with his young wife. And Faith, as the wife was aptly named, thrust her own pretty head into the street, letting the wind play with the pink ribbon of her cap while she called to Goodman Brown. "Dearest heart," whispered she softly and rather sadly, when her lips were close to his ear, "prithee put off your journey until sunrise and sleep in your own bed tonight. A lone woman is troubled with such dreams and such thoughts that she's afeard of herself sometimes. Pray tarry with me this night, dear husband, of all nights in the year." "My love and my faith," replied young Goodman Brown, "of all nights in the year, this one night must I tarry away only. My journey, as thou callest it, forth and back again, must needs be done twixt now and sunrise. What, my sweet wife, dost thou doubt me already, and we but 3 months married? Then God bless you, for ribbons, and may you find all well when you come back." "Amen," cried Goodman Brown. "Say thy prayers, dear Faith, and go to bed at dusk, and no harm will come to thee." So they parted, and the young man pursued his way until, being about to turn the corner by the meeting house, he looked back and saw the head of Faith still peeping after him with a melancholy air, in spite of her pink ribbons. "Poor little Faith," thought he, for his heart smote him. "What a wretch am I to leave her on such an errand? She talks of dreams, too." Methought as she spoke, there was trouble in her face, as if a dream had warned her what work is to be done tonight. But no, it would kill her to think it. Well, she's a blessed angel on earth, and after this one night, I'll cling to her skirts and follow her to heaven. Just FYI, Goodman Brown is the same thing as like Mr., because we're going to meet different. He had taken a dreary road, darkened by all the gloomiest trees of the forest, which barely stood aside to let the narrow path creep through, and closed immediately behind. It was all as lonely as can be, and there is his peculiarity in such a solitude that the traveler knows not who may be concealed by the innumerable trunks and the thick boughs overhead, so that with lonely footsteps he may yet be passing through an unseen multitude. "There may be a devilish Indian behind every tree," said Goodman Brown, and he glanced fearfully behind him as he added, "What if the devil himself should be at my very elbow?" And just so you know, the Puritans, we'll see this with the Crucible, so we all live pretty close together, right? Because we're new to the country, there's nothing else to really hate here, and there's this huge fear of the forest, and kind of this belief that that's where evil things happen, with all their crazy ceremonies, so we're already like, forest is not good. His head being turned back, he passed a crook up the road, and looking forward again, beheld the figure of a man in grave and decent attire, seated at the foot of an old tree. He arose at Goodman Brown's approach and walked onward side by side with him. "You're late, Goodman Brown. The clock of the Old South was striking as I came through Boston, and that is a full 15 minutes agone." "Faith kept me back a while," replied the young man with a tremor in his voice, caused by the sudden appearance of his companion, though not wholly unexpected. It was now deep dusk in the forest, and deepest in that part of it where these two were journeying. As nearly as could be discerned, the second traveler was about 50 years old, apparently in the same rank of life as Goodman Brown, and bearing a considerable resemblance to him, though perhaps more in expression than features. Still, they might have been taken for father and son. And yet, though the elder person was as simply clad as the younger in a similar manner too, he had an indescribable air of one who knew the world and who would not have felt abashed at the governor's dinner table, or in King William's court, were it possible that his affairs should call him thither. But the only thing about him that could be fixed upon as remarkable was his staff, which bore the likeness of a great black snake, so curiously wrought that it might almost be seen to twist and wriggle itself like a living serpent. This, of course, must have been an ocular deception assisted by the uncertain light. Who do you think this traveler is? He's carrying a staff that's shaped like a serpent.
He's a wizard.
Gamer.
Wizard. Something not only up and up. This is a dull pace for the beginning of a journey. Take my staff if you're so soon weary. Friend, said the other, exchanging his slow pace for a full stop, having kept covenant by meeting thee here, it is my purpose now to return whence I came. I have scruples touching the matter thou must of. Sayest thou so? Replied he of the serpent, smiling apart. Let us walk on, nevertheless, reasoning as we go, and if I convince thee not, thou shalt turn back. We are but a little way in the forest yet. Too far, exclaimed the good man, unconsciously resuming his walk. My father never went to the woods on such an errand, nor his father before him. We have been a race of honest men and good Christians since the day of martyrs, and shall I be the first by the name of Brown that ever took this path and kept such company, thou wouldst say, observed the elder person, interrupting his pause. Well said, Goodman Brown. I have been as well acquainted with your family as with every one among the Puritans, and that's no trifle to say. I helped your grandfather, the constable, when he lashed the Quaker woman so smartly through the streets of Salem, and it was I that brought your father a pitch pine knot kindled at my own hearth, to set fire to an Indian village in King Philip's War. They were my good friends both, and many a pleasant walk have we had along this path, and returned merrily after midnight. I would fain be friends with you for their sake. If it be as thou sayest, replied Goodman Brown, I marvel they never spoke of these matters, or verily I marvel not, seeing that the least rumor of the sort would have driven them from New England. We are a people of prayer and good works to boot, and abide no such wickedness. Wickedness or not, said the traveler with the twisted staff, I have a very general acquaintance here in New England. The deacons of many a church have drunk the communion wine with me. The selectmen of Diverstown make me their chairman, and a majority of the great and general court are firm supporters of my interest. The governor and I, too, these are state secrets. Can this be so? Cried Goodman Brown with a stare of amazement at his undisturbed companion. Howbeit, I have nothing to do with the governor council. They have their own ways, and are no rule for a simple husbandman like me. But were I to go on with thee, how should I meet the eye of that good old man, our minister at Salem village? Oh, his voice would make me tremble both Sabbath day and lecture day. Thus far, the elder traveler had listened with due gravity, but now burst into a fit of irrepressible mirth, shaking himself so violently that his snake-like staff actually seemed to wriggle in sympathy. Ha ha ha! Shouted he again and again, and then composing himself. Well, go on, Goodman Brown. Go on, but prithee don't kill me with laughing. Well, then, to end the matter at once, said Goodman Brown, there is my wife Faith. It would break her dear little heart, and I'd rather break my own. Nay, if that be the case, answered the other, even go thy ways, Goodman Brown. I would not for 20 old women like the one hobbling before us, that Faith should come to any harm. As he spoke, he pointed his staff at a female figure on the path, in whom Goodman Brown recognized a very pious and exemplary dame, who had taught him his catechism in youth, and was still his moral and spiritual advisor, jointly with the minister and Deacon Goodman. I marvel truly that Goody Cloy should be so far in the wilderness at nightfall. But with your leave, friend, I shall take a cut through the woods until we've left this Christian woman behind. Being a stranger to you, she might ask whom I was consorting with and whither I was going. Be it so, said his fellow traveler, he take you to the woods, and let me keep the path. So he sees his, essentially Sunday school teacher, catechism teacher, coming down the road. It's like, she can't see me with you, so I'm going to hide out in the woods. When she passes by, I'll come back out. And the guy's like, okay. Accordingly, the young man turned aside, but took care to watch his companion, who advanced softly along the road until he had come within a staff's length of the old dame. She, meanwhile, was making the best of her way with singular speed for so aged a woman, and mumbling some indistinct words of prayer, doubtless, as she went. The traveler put forth his staff and touched her withered neck with what seemed the serpent's scale. "The devil!" screamed the pious old lady. "Then Goody Cloy's knows your old friend," friend," observed the traveller, confronting her and leaning on his riding stick. "Ah, forsooth, and is it your worship indeed?" cried the good dame. "Yet truly it is, and in the very image of my old gossip, Goodman Brown, the grandfather of that silly fellow that now lives. But would your worship believe it? My broomstick has strangely disappeared, stolen, as I suspect, by that unhanged witch, good Corey. And that, too, when I was all anointed with the juice of smallage and cinquefoil and wolfsbane, mingled with fine wheat and the fat of a newborn babe," said the shape of old Goodman Brown. "Ah, your worship knows the recipe," cried the old lady, cackling aloud. "So as I was saying, being all ready for the meeting and no horse to ride on, I made up my mind to foot it, for they tell me there's a nice young man to be taken into communion tonight. But now your good worship will lend me your arm, and we shall be there in a twinkling." "That can hardly be," answered her friend. "I may not spare you my arm, good Cloyce, but here is my staff, if you will." So saying, he threw it down at her feet, where perhaps it assumed life, being one of the rods which its owner had formerly lent to the Egyptian magi. Of this fact, however, Goodman Brown could not take cognizance. He had cast his eyes up in astonishment, and looking down again, beheld neither goody Cloyce nor the serpentine staff, but his fellow traveller alone, who waited for him as calmly as if nothing had happened. So who is the traveller? Oh, keep going. What did she say? Our traveller began, and there was a world of meaning in this simple comment. They continued to walk onward, while the elder traveller exhorted his companion to make himself speed up, good speed, and persevere in the path, discoursing so aptly that his argument seemed rather to spring up in the bosom of his auditor than to be suggested by himself. As they went, he plucked a branch of maple to serve for a walking stick, and began to strip it of the twigs and little boughs, which were wet with evening dew. The moment his fingers touched them, they became strangely withered and dried up as with the weak sunshine. Thus the pair proceeded at a good free pace, until suddenly, in the gloomy hollow of the road, Goodman Brown sat himself down on the stump of a tree and refused to go any farther. "Friend," said he stubbornly, "my mind is made up. Not another step will I budge on this land. So what if a wretched old woman do choose to go to the devil when I thought she was going to heaven? Is that any reason why I should quit my dear faith and go after her?" "You will think better of this by and by," said Mrs. Williams. "Sit here and rest yourself a while, and when you feel like moving again, there is my staff to help you along." Without more words, he threw his companion the maple stick, and was as speedily out of sight as if he had vanished into the deepening gloom. The young man sat a few moments by the roadside, applauding himself gravely, and thinking with how clear a conscience he should meet the minister in his morning walk, nor shrink from the eye of good old Deacon Goodman, and what calm sleep would be his that very night, and which was to have been spent so wickedly, but so purely and sweetly now in the arms of faith. Amidst these pleasant and praiseworthy meditations, Goodman Brown heard the tramp of horses along the road, and deemed it advisable to conceal himself within the verge of the forest, conscious of the guilty purpose that he had brought him thither, though now so aptly turned from it. On came the hoof tramps and the voices of the riders, two grave old voices conversing soberly as they drew near. These mingled sounds appeared to pass along the road, within a few yards of the young man's hiding place, but owing doubtless to the depth of the gloom at that particular spot, neither the travelers nor their steeds were visible, though their figures brushed a small house by the wayside. It could not be seen that they intercepted, even for a moment, a faint gleam from the strip of bright sky of what was they must have passed. Goodman Brown alternately crouched and stood on tiptoe, pulling aside the branches, and thrusting forth his head as far as he durst without discerning so much as a shadow. It vexed him the more because he could have sworn, were such a thing possible, that he recognized the voice of the minister and Deacon Goodman, jogging along quietly as they were wont to do, when bound to some ordination or ecclesiastical council. While yet within hearing, one of the riders stopped to flip a switch. "Of the two, Reverend Sir," said the voice like the deacon's, "I'd rather miss an ordination dinner than tonight's meeting. They tell me that some of our community are to be here from Falmouth and beyond, and others from Connecticut and Rhode Island, besides several of the Indian powwows who, after their fashion, know almost as much deviltry as the best of us. Moreover, there's a goodly young woman to be taken to communion." "Mighty well," Deacon Goodman replied, the solemn old tone of the minister. "Spur up, or we shall be late. Nothing can be done, you know, until I get home."